Good afternoon, dear students. Today we are going to answer the first questions of population under the section A, which is population movement, Cameroon history. And the first question will fall on June 2009, population movement in the 19th century Cameroon, section A. Here goes the question. With reference to specific examples, discuss the extent to which the search for peace occasioned the movement of people in the 19th century. I repeat, this is June 2009. With reference to specific examples, discuss the extent to which the search for peace occasioned the movement of peoples in the 19th century, June 2009. Good. With the interpretation of this question, you need to identify the key term, and the key term to this question is discuss the extent. Discuss the extent. Whenever you have a word or a question with discuss the extent, know that that question is a two-sided question. It's a two-sided question. So the interpretation of this question will be as follows. A two-sided question center on the causes of population movement in Cameroon in the 19th century. The first part is based on the factor that forced people to move as a result of the desire for peace, while the second part, other factors should be examined. This is the interpretation of the question. Now, with the introduction, you need to identify the key terms. When you identify the key term, you define that key term. After defining the key term, you give the historical background of that particular question. Then you give the general direction and examples of tribes. Then you link your question to the answer. What am I trying to say? For example, the introduction that you're going to see will be divided in several colors. The red color will be the definition. The blue color will be the historical background for you to understand what I'm trying to explain. For example, our key term in the question here is population movement. So I'm going to start my introduction by telling the examiner what population movement is all about. Here comes the introduction. Population movement refers to the widespread displacement of ethnic and tribal groups from one geographical region to another in the course of the 19th century in Cameroon. Before the 19th century, migration was mainly voluntary, but during the 19th century, most migration were involuntary. The general direction of movement was from the north to the south, and movement was often in waves or groups. And the ethnic or tribal groups that often migrated include the Bantus, Semi-Bantus, and the Fulanis. The search for peace contributed enormously to the movement of people in Cameroon in the 19th century, but that notwithstanding, other factors equally contributed. Good. This is our brief introduction for this question of June 2009. Remember, the first factor, you are to examine the factor that occasioned the movement of people as a result of what? Peace in the 19th century. Good. The following involuntary factor occasioned the movement of people in the 19th century in search for peace. Take note, all these factors here for the first part are political factors, because all political factors were out in search of what? Peace. Now, to begin, it was caused by the jihad of Modibo Adama. These were holy wars fought by Muslim fanatics in order to spread Islam. The jihad were introduced in North Cameroon by Modibo Adama in order to spread Islam. Ethnic groups that rejected Islam were forced to migrate to other areas. Example, the Tupuri, the Musgum, and the Massa were forced to migrate to the hilly areas of the north. Also, the Balichamba, the Tika, and the Mbom left the north southward because of the jihad of Modibo Adama. Now, again, migrations were provoked in Cameroon in the 19th century by succession dispute. These disputes were common after the death of a king. Though there existed well-established succession laws in most kingdoms, ambitious princes often attempted to bypass succession laws to ascend the throne. When they failed, they moved away with their followers to other areas to form new kingdoms. For instance, when the leader of the Chamba group Garube died at Bafutfondom in 1835, his 7 sons separated to form the 7 Balis Fondom we have today: the Balingam, Balingashu, Balikotang, Balimuti, Balinyonga, Balinkumba, and Balingasin. Also, the Douala separated Apeti when Bedi died. Ewale, one of his sons, took his followers to the Wuri Estuary where he founded the Douala kingdoms. In addition, at Refem, the children of the Fond of Tika separated after his death. Ngonsop founded the Sop Fondom, Mbam founded the Mbam Fondom, and the Shara founded the Bamoon Fondom, all as a result of what? Succession dispute. Good. Meanwhile, inter-ethnic conflict in the 19th century contributed to population movement in Cameroon. Stronger ethnic groups attacked and defeated weaker ones, forcing them to move to different areas. For example, the Balichamba split and settled in different parts of the grass field after they were defeated by the Bamileke at the Battle of Bafut-Fondo. Also, the Nka migrated from Kimbo and settled at their present location after they were defeated by the Nso. In addition, the Bafut raid on Tingon and Oban forced them to migrate out of Bafut. Lastly, the Bamoon Saw War, or the Saw Bamoon War, whereby the Saw defeated the Bamoon and stopped their westward expansion. Then, some ethnic groups migrated in the 19th century because they refused to pay tribute. These were fines imposed by stronger groups on weaker ones after defeating them during intertribal conflict. They include slaves, ivory, cattle groups that refused to pay this tribute had to migrate to new location. For example, the Baya, the Vut, and Tika migrated from the north southward because they refused to pay tribute to the Fulani. Also, the Oban and Tingo migrated out of Bafut because they refused to pay tribute to their Bafut landlord. Good. Then, lastly, German labor, social, and political policy contributed to the 19th century population movement in Cameroon. Ethnic groups that refused to collaborate with the Germans and resisted this policy migrated to new sites, fear for punishment. For example, after the Bakweri resistance, the people migrated out of Moya to Boya. Also, the Widikum migrated to Bali because they refused to provide laborers to Wehrland, who was a German recruiter. They only returned to Widikum in 1906. These were involuntary factors that pushed people to migrate in search for peace. Now, the second part of this question now, you are giving now other factors. People did not migrate only because of the search of peace. They also migrated because of several reasons. So my introduction of the second part will be as follows. Apart from the desire for peace, other factors as examined below equally contributed to the movement of people in Cameroon in the 19th century. Good. Now, they want to start to make the examiner know that I'm starting with this particular factor. Example, economically. So when I say economically, the examiner knows that, okay, I'm starting the second part with the economic factors. Economically, the 19th century population movement in Cameroon were caused by the search for grazing land. Ethnic groups that depended on animal rearing migrated to areas that had abundant grazing land. This was particular with the Fulani, who migrated from the north of Cameroon southwards to the western grassland. This explains the presence of the Fulani today around the Saba Hills and the Menchum valleys. Again, some ethnic groups migrated in Cameroon in the 19th century in search of agricultural land. This group depended on subsistence agriculture for a living, though they migrated to areas with abundant fertile soil for agriculture. For example, the Bali left the north for the western grassland in search for agricultural land. Also, the Bakweri migrated to the foot of Mount Cameroon because they wanted to explore the rich volcanic soil for agriculture.